The first step in installation was cutting the branches that might get too close to the chimney. We could pretend that installing a wood stove was a practical decision. We could say we planned it to be more self-sustaining, but we didn't. We really just wanted one because when you imagine living in the woods, there's always a wood stove. It's a big expense just to look cool, so the practicality came later. We spent a good amount of time looking at the various options in wood stoves. The prices range from a couple of thousand US dollars to more than 30,000 USD installed. We were inclined to stay in the middle. The more expensive the stove, the more reliable, but also the more efficient it would be. And since we were forcing ourselves to be practical, we were concerned about efficiency. The more efficient wood stoves can reduce the amount of wood used by as much as 30%, or at least that's what we were told. So, in the long run, a more expensive stove could actually save us money, and that seemed pretty practical. So we started looking casually at some of the more expensive European options. Import fees and technology made them pricey, but the designs were a bit more modern than the American or Japanese counterparts that we saw. We checked stove stores in Nagano City and back in Nagoya, but nothing really struck us as perfect. And unfortunately, I had also started to develop a dream of having an oven in the stove. This was caused by seeing some insanely expensive Italian stoves that were full-on kitchens. Aside from the unaffordable price, I thought that was a pretty good idea, but my wife nixed the whole concept of a cook stove in the living room. Of course, she was right. So when I accidentally encountered a small stove maker in nearby Matsumoto City, I was excited to see that the stove designs integrated discrete pizza ovens right into the main stove unit. That's right, a pizza oven that didn't look like a pizza oven. I couldn't wait to show my wife, and when we went down to the small Matsumoto motorcycle garage turned stove workshop, we were sold on the design, the maker, and even the advanced technology of the stove. It would be perfect. We made the deal to purchase the stove and the installation in spring, and we planned the installation for early autumn. And that is why there's a big hole in our house. Watching them saw out that round hole, the size of an LP vinyl record, was a bit difficult, I must confess. We gotten pretty used to the house the way it was, and while this was surely something we wanted, it was invasive and we both cringed as the installation progressed. The installation actually took a couple of days. First, we needed to make the path out of the house for the smoke. We installed a double wall stovepipe inside the house, but once outside, we changed to a single wall. This was lighter, and the stove manufacturer insisted it was the best practice for our type of chimney installation. There's a long horizontal portion of the chimney inside that runs along one of the beams of the house. This long segment was a bit of a concern for the stove maker, and he warned us that we really should make sure that it stays clean and swept out all the time, especially in the summer. The stove itself has some cool elements that I don't clearly understand, but in short, it is a double burn stove, which actually forces the hot smoke back into the fire chamber to be re-burned. This substantially reduces the smoke and carbon dioxide, and it makes the air cleaner while making the stove burn more efficient. A fire wastes a lot of potential fuel in ash and smoke, and double burning that makes the most out of the fuel you have, or at least that's how I understand it, and that's how we're supposed to save that 30% of wood fuel. Whether I understood it or not, it was really exciting to finally see the stove itself roll in and be placed. It was heavy, to say the least, but once it was placed, it really looked like it had been a part of the house all along. The way the stairs wrapped around it made the position look pre-planned, which, to be honest, it was. But we had no idea what stove or even type of stove would finally sit in that spot. The stove we chose, produced locally here in Nagano, at least for us, seemed like the perfect choice.